Welcome to Campaigns and Conquests, a podcast about tabletop wargaming and role playing games. In each episode, we'll explore a different game system, setting, or campaign and discuss the strategies, tactics, and storytelling techniques that can be used to create a truly immersive and engaging gaming experience. We'll also talk about the designers, artists, and writers who have created some of the most popular and influential games in the hobby and how their work has shaped the way we play. So, whether you're a veteran gamer, a newcomer to the hobby, or just someone who's interested in learning more about tabletop wargaming and role playing games, join us on Campaigns and Conquests. In our first episode, we'll be taking a look at battletech, one of the most popular and enduring science fiction settings in tabletop wargaming. We'll discuss the factions, the lore, and the game mechanics that make battletech such a compelling setting for tabletop battles. We hope you'll join us on this journey through the worlds of tabletop wargaming and role playing games.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Campaigns and Conquests, a podcast about tabletop wargaming and role playing games. I'm your host, Storm, and I'm joined by my co host, Magenta.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm so excited to be here to talk about all things tabletop gaming.
We're both passionate tabletop gamers, and we've been friends for many years. We've played just about every game under the sun, and we're always looking for new and exciting games to try.
We're also big fans of the tabletop gaming community, and we love talking to other gamers about their experiences and their favorite games.
With this podcast, we hope to share our love of tabletop gaming with you, our listeners. We'll be talking about different game systems, settings, and campaigns, and we'll also be discussing the strategies, tactics, and storytelling techniques that can be used to create a truly immersive and engaging gaming experience.
Our topic today is Battletech, which is a new game to me, but one that Storm has played for many years. How old were you when you first started playing Battletech, Storm?
I started playing at 17 when it was released in 1984.
Okay, what drew you to the game?
Uh, I got my first look at the box, which was very attractive. I'm not usually a big one into art, but this thing just hit me right. It looked like a walking tank. It had tank barrels for arms and a big spotlight. A lot of tanks had spotlights in the 80s. It just everything really hit me as future armor warfare. Giant battling robot just looked very attractive.
Exciting. Well, I can see why you were drawn to it. So, what's it like as a game to play? What do you like best about it?
Well, the the gameplay is I don't know, it's hard to tell between the gameplay and the lore. Both are such highly attractive factors in the game. Uh, the gameplay has really neat action. Not only can you shoot at one another with these giant uh, battle mechs, as they're called. Originally, they were called battle droids. The first set was battle droids, but Lucas sued the company for the use of droid, and they came up with battle mech. But the giant robots are called battle mechs, and they could become physical if you run out of ammunition or you don't have any more weapons to use. Ram them, beat them with fists or with your arms. There's a great maneuver called death from above. If you have jump jets, some of these robots can fly temporarily into the air and land on the head and shoulders of an enemy mech, trying to crush the cockpit and eliminate the pilot within. So that's really a lot of hilarity can ensue. The lore is great. A completely uh, full set of shit. All right, so I really enjoyed the gameplay and the lore. They kind of, what that's what really kept me going with the game is that the gameplay gets you hooked and the lore keeps you there. After a while, there's only so many. Okay, I've got a giant robot and you do, and we're just beating each other up, which can be fun, but then you need some more. And that's when the lore comes in. A giant story about humanity that's exploded in population and taken to the stars, thousands of worlds within 5 or 6 different countries, uh, for lack of a better way to put it, countries. They're called houses. There's House Korea, Karita, and House Steiner, and House Laos. There's a whole list of them, and a periphery of independence that kind of operate within a gray area of space, pirates, as it were. So there's story after story, and as the game progressed in age, uh, we got novels and video games and more stories. It's become a giant universe, and it's one of the first, if not the first, game that I ever saw people so passionate about that they actually started to LARP as the characters they were playing on the tabletop, dressing in olive drab outfits and having jumpsuits that look like mech pilot suits. It really has created quite a fan base, and that in of itself is attractive as well.
Sounds really exciting. Kind of reminds me of Rock'em Sock'em Robots with a lot more detail and an adult version, if you would say,
Mm-hmm.
that people could get into and really role play with.
Mm-hmm.
So, how do you set up a game if you are just getting started?
Well, the beginning scenario is one of just kill the guy. You can choose 1 or 2 or 4 mechs or how many you feel comfortable with, and you start at one end of a battlefield. There's a map that comes with the set, a starter map, and your opponent sets at the other end, and you just maneuver around the terrain, trying to gain an advantage by getting under cover and catching your opponent in the open, and just a, a good old duel to the death. And as I say, that can be a lot of fun. You can add in some more people as you go, and after a while, though, you kind of want some substance. You want some. Why are we here? Why are we doing this? And that's when you can bring in the lore, and you can start talking about what faction you want to play, the motivations that particular section of the world have, who is their rival, and what kind of conflicts you can bring to it, and have a more in depth scenario with objectives and multiple forces and such. So kind of an expandable. Mm-hmm.
So, when you start off, are you creating a character for yourself, or do you start by creating a robot, or do you have to create both?
You start with a character. It's got a great mixture of wargaming and role playing, which is another thing that I love more than anything. I like the idea of having both. I don't think it's a genre that is as separate from one another as some believe. So you start out with a character, a pilot. They have 2 skills, a gunnery and a piloting skill. Give it a name, give it a faction, uh, whatever kind of background you want to give it, and then, or him or her, as I should say, and then you roll up their 2 skills. Then you choose what you want to pilot. So when you play the game, you say, let's try light mechs. The mechs are classed by weight, like boxers, starting from light to assault, which is like a super heavy. So you choose which one you want to be in as a, so everything's a little bit balanced. You don't want a light mech versus a heavy mech. It's not fair that way. And you go and you duel it out. And if you're lucky enough to win, you can keep your pilot, and eventually the skills that they start with will improve because they've gained experience, just like a role playing setup. It's neat.
What happens if your character gets killed in battle?
This isn't the new style. Back in the '80s, uh, a death of a character wasn't as monumental or cataclysmic as it sometimes is treated in modern gaming today. So you ripped it up and you started again. The catch line for the game originally was, in the 30th century, uh, life is cheap, but battle mechs aren't. So they're disposable.
Oh boy, I hope that's not the future we're really headed for.
Could be. It's looking that way some days, um, but yeah, hopefully not either. But it's a lot of fun. So, but it's really great to have that role playing, and you can take it further. And there's even a role playing game for it that was made some years later. It's a detailed, expansive universe that isn't just about piloting giant battling robots anymore. That's where it started, but it's gone a lot farther. So it's great.
Are there any movies or other pop culture, spin-offs that have come from this
Yeah,
genre?
yeah. They've never made a movie per se, but there have been numerous giant battling robot movies that have had association. Um, it had its own cartoon. Unfortunately, the folks at FASA that made it, as clever as they were, as imaginative as they were, had run into more than just getting sued by Lucas. Some of the mechs that were created for the game were similar, if not identical, to Robotech, which is a Japanese version of BattleTech that existed prior, and it was basically about giant battling robots as well. And there was a legal altercation about that. But now that that's all over, it created a kind of symbiotic relationship between the two games, where there's lots of crossovers in gameplay. There's been crossovers in fan fiction. This, again, it's it rivals Star Wars for its impassioned players who've written stories and made CGI videos and even rock songs about the factions that they play. It's really neat. So, yeah, there's a lot of things. Robot Jocks is one '80s movie that is synonymous with BattleTech. So, mhm.
Exciting. Kind of reminds me too, when you describe these robots of trying to think of the movie. It's the one Pacific Rim, I think is what it was called.
Exactly.
Yeah, where they had the great big robots they were in. And then, of course, in Avatar, they had something very similar, except I think they were more a smaller class of
Hmm.
robots. But, and even Aliens, where she was battling the alien in in that big, mechanized walker that she had, which was kind of an improvised version of a BattleTech robot. But um, I can see where it's kind of shown up in other genres, kind of something similar, not exactly BattleTech, but it's a
Hmm.
concept that I've always found fascinating. The idea of being a pilot inside of a robot like that, is kind of like having your own car on steroids. So
Right.
um, pretty
Yep.
cool.
Hmm. Yeah. The loader that was used by Ripley um, made its way into the lore for BattleTech. Not directly; they'd had enough with legality, but the idea of a utilitarian robotic exoskeleton is kind of the grandfather of the modern battle mech in the lore, and it was influenced by the aliens altercation. They were approximately the same. I think the same year. Aliens was 1984, if I recall correctly. I may be wrong, but it was close enough that it influenced the game as far as the lore. So, mhm. um, one of the other great uh, stories about this, like I say, I really love BattleTech because its fan base is so devoted, or at least was. I know from the old FASA days. was the Mech Mash. So the game comes with miniatures, or did, still does. But in the 80s, Ralph Partha was a famous sculptor that made high quality miniatures for numerous game systems, was hired to do the miniatures for Battletech. And they're about 25 millimeters, so about an inch or two high, something like that, 3 inches high, depending on the size of the Battletech. And you would, if you entered a Mech Mash scenario, which I never played, I did play in one, but I was kind of a chicken because the reason why is those were about $5 to $6, those miniatures, which was a lot of money in 1984, a lot more than it is now. And you spent a lot of time putting these things together. But at the Mech Mash, they were going to get torn apart. So what was going to happen was, in the game system, you can lose an arm of the robot, a leg of the robot can be blown right off. So in the Mech Mash, if you lose a leg in the game, the ref comes by with some pliers and rips your leg off your miniature, your own personal property. Now you've volunteered to be part of this, so it's not like somebody's wrecking your property without your permission, but it does raise the stakes of the game. And these were just a blast to watch. And if you have a reactor explosion, which is another part of gameplay, your engine can overheat or get hit and have a catastrophic explosion. Out comes the carpenter's hammer, and they smash your miniature into, pulverize it into dust. So it was a competitive and entertaining spectacle that brought a lot of cheering and jeering to the table. It was a lot of fun to watch and be part of. I didn't do so well, of course, but it was still a joy to play.
So to hear that, that means that this game has crossed kind of all the genre boundaries. You've got the role playing aspect of it. You've got the basically the you know, strategic gameplay where you're rolling the dice and you're, going up against, one robot versus another. And then you've got the tabletop where I'm assuming you would have like line of sight at play and, where you would have to actually physically move on the terrain with a physical to scale robot.
Mm-hmm. Excuse me. Yeah. Yep. The game gives you a little bit of a financial break when you buy it. At first, you get a 2-dimensional cardboard miniature that stands up like a table tent menu at Hardee's or something like that. And you eventually hope they hope you invest in the metal miniature, which is a 3-dimensional pewter paintable miniature, and you use 3-dimensional terrain like most miniatures games. And yes, there's a strategic board game called Succession Wars. Succession Wars are a major portion of the lore, and they're kind of a world war or galactic war, as it were, between the different houses that make up the core of the storyline. And what we would do, and what we plan to do with our players that come to play here at Command Post Gaming, is we're going to use Succession Wars as a kind of campaign tracker. We'll have 5 players or more if we can fit them. Technically, there is almost no limit to how many people we can involve in this game. And they have to be committed to play. So you play the strategic level, and when the enemies come into contact at that strategic level on that board game, we go and we play a virtual miniatures version of the game on a program called Tabletop Simulator, which is a joy to have. If you're a miniatures gamer that lives away from most potential opponents, as I do, it's a godsend. You can play virtual miniatures for a variety of games for a cheap price of $20. We're not associated with it. We're not getting a cut by selling it to you, but we do use it as an instrument, a tool to play our games. And it's phenomenal. So that's how we set up our strategic and tactical miniatures games. We also do use PC. The game, or the Battletech universe, I should say, has a history of video games as strong as its tabletop games. The first uh, local area network game I ever played was a Battletech game called Mech Warrior. And I played it at Gen Con through, I think, the Prodigy system or something like that. And I was standing at the software producer's booth, and they had a demo computer set up, and you could sign up and play for 3 or 4 minutes or whatever it was. And there was an opponent playing on a PC in the hotel across the street. First time I played a human being on a PC ever. And it was a simulator of the mechs from Battletech. And that has gone on to this day. They're still making that. They also make a strategic or a tactical version, which is basically the board game computerized. And we have that product available. It's turn-based. It literally is watching Battletech, the board game, come to life on a turn-based situation. We use a tracker, just like Succession Wars, for you to play a larger, more in-depth campaign as a commander of a unit of mechs versus other humans. It's a lot of fun.
Wow, that does sound like a lot of fun. So, if anybody who's watching right now wanted to get in on that, would they just subscribe and send you a comment, say something in the comments to show interest to get involved in that, or how does that work?
Yeah, like, subscribe the video, as always, please. It helps us out a great deal. Uh, Leave a comment or follow the link that we'll put down in the description to our Discord server, where you can join the meeting room at Discord, labeled Battletech conveniently, and talk to all the other people that are waiting and ready to play. You can tell us what faction you want to play. We'll put you in a room separate with all of your teammates so you can discuss battle plans and tactics. And we'll give you all the information you need so that you can log in, whether it be uh, the miniatures version on Tabletop Simulator or the PC version on Steam via the internet. We'll get you going.
Cool. So, yeah, and if I wanted to bring a friend, I could bring a friend, right?
Absolutely, the more the merrier. Yep, it's uh, the campaign lends itself to as many people as we can fit into it. Yep.
Now, is this? It sounds like this is a kind of a game that would be something that could get kind of maybe enough interest to play on more than one game, or are you just starting with like one day a week so far, or how does that work?
Yeah, we'll work something out with the players. We try to be flexible. I've had people say, "Why don't you just set a time and then everybody can tell you whether they can play or not?" I like to do it another way. I like to find people that are interested and then talk to that group and say, "What's all good for you? Let's find a time that works for as many of these people as we can, so we can get the largest group to play at the same time." And for those of you that still can't make it because you're an outlier, don't fret. We can put you on a waiting list. We can hook you up with the rest of the people from other groups that just didn't make the cut. But that way we can get large groups up and running at different times. We'd like to do it weekly, but we're flexible at that. But yeah, it's a league type of situation. This isn't a one-off afternoon. This is a regular occurrence, like bowling league or playing softball at your bar, where you know in a league or a tournament situation. Yeah.
So I'm assuming if you're like playing on the same team with a group that you could like end up with making some friends there and having some camaraderie within your team, and then of course stomping the other guy, which is
It,
always fun.
that's right. Our games are what we're looking to emulate more than anything is a social, large multiplayer group atmosphere. The kind of thing that I experienced and loved more than any other type of gaming was going to Gen Con and having 15, 20 people or more playing in one game for 4 or 5 hours, sometimes a day for 4 days in a immersive, deep, and really enjoyable scenario or system. And that's what we're trying to achieve here. Big games with a lot of people so that we can establish friends and play on a regular basis. Yep.
Well, that sounds exciting to me because I tell you, I've played video games for many, many years, but and there are some that I go back to and I play just for like they're almost like automatic at this point, and I've kind of lost interest in them. Like I've played some of the strategic computer-based games, and you're playing against a computer, and after a while, you get to where you can kind of predict exactly what it's going to do. It doesn't ever say, it doesn't get upset when you beat it. Which obviously. But it also, I mean, it's just there's no one to high five with at the end of the game or anyone to say, "Hey, that was great. That was awesome what you did there," or any kind of camaraderie to, interact with a human being. And it's kind of after a while you just kind of feel like what am I doing this for? So it's nice to have an outlet where there's a human being reacting with you, more than one. You make some friends and have some folks to interact with um, on something that's deeply interesting to you, and you don't have to drive 8 or 10 hours to go somewhere and do it like once a year. You can do it, in the comfort of your home, but still have that social interaction whenever you want.
Right. That's right. And it's everybody's got a busy schedule, and we can try to hook you up with people that have that sliver of free time that you have at the same time, so that you can play. And the beauty of the internet is that um, they don't have to be near you. You can, as you say, stay home and meet people you'd never get an opportunity to meet in any other situation from across the globe. Um, Currently, we can't help you with a language barrier yet, but the way technology is going, that hurdle may be circumvented soon too. But other than that, we
Oh, 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 it is though. I got to tell you, it is.
oh
Because for some folks anyway, if you have an Android phone and you have the latest version of, well, actually, the latest Samsungs have automatic AI translation technology. So if you're talking through your phone to someone else, it can translate between different languages and you can both hear each other. So if as long as one person in the group has a Samsung, you could probably do it.
there you go, there you go. So that's, and like I say, it just keeps marching on, it keeps getting better. Just like the PC version we're playing. If you're not a tabletop player anymore, maybe you just you know want things to move along slightly quicker. We have the turn-based PC game, and and there you go. If the language barrier is gone, the graphics for that game and the gameplay for it, comparative to its grandfather from the '80s that existed, it's unbelievable. It's just submersive uh, graphic experience with these games. Mm-hmm.
Well, and that brings up something I wanted to mention too, because you talked about Tabletop Simulator. And when I first started with that game, I wasn't really very comfortable with the method of moving things around, but it really only took me about, I want to say like a half an hour of actually using it to get comfortable with like moving the pieces around and learning, how to scroll. And it's just your standard WASD for your moving, side to side and forwards and backwards, that kind of thing, and then zooming in on the screen, and you've got your tilt and pan and all of that kind of stuff. That's pretty standard. So if you can figure those things out in other games, it's a piece of cake, really, when it comes to Tabletop Simulator. But it's really neat how the pieces being three dimensional like that. They can just, I mean, they look so realistic, and some of them will even like move and have little animations with them, which is kind of cool too.
Yeah, they've become uh, they come to life in them themselves. Uh, Between soundboards, background music, now there's uh, special effects. So the mech just doesn't. It's not a chess piece you just remove from the board anymore. It's burning, and there's smoke and the whole 9 yards there. So it's gone a while, which reminds me, if tabletop simulator's been around a long time, like you say, it's very easy to navigate, and there's not deceivers. In the early years of that program, it was a little bit of a joke. Um, it's the adage about first impressions is understandable, but so is the one about second chances. And if you're somebody who says, "Well, I remember that thing and it was a mess," yes, it was, and it's been fixed. It is streamlined. It is beautiful. It work. It stood the test of time. And so if give it a second chance, and you'll really see that you can have a lot of fun. And it's the closest thing to miniatures that you can get on the tabletop. You don't have a cleanup. You don't have a family member or a roommate saying, "Get that off the table. I have company," or "Get that mess." Now everything is very easy.
Or a cat who likes to carry off pieces and hide them under your couch.
That's another the bane of war games, the kitty cat. And you got a save button, so you can start right up where you left off without having to worry about setup or cleanup or space conservation or price. $20, you can play with all the miniatures you can get your hands on for free. And so
Well, now that $20, is that per month or how does that work?
it's a retail one-time price, which is excellent. I mean, talk about a value. And
That's amazingly rare these days. Most everything wants to be a subscription, and then by the time you sign up for something, it's like, oh, it's only 2.95 for this. It's only 3.95 per month for that, and before you know it, you're spending like 150 per month on little teeny tiny things you forgot you even signed up for. So
exactly.
it's refreshing for something to just be a one time price, and then you're just done with it. You don't have to worry about it because I don't know why we ever got into this whole everything's a subscription kind of thing. And to begin with, it just seems like a way to like you just keep constantly paying for something that's never really yours, you know.
Yep.
So kind of cool.
Yeah, it's a great way to do it. And but we like options. One of the things I always do when I write my games, when I present my games, when I game master, is I like to have players have options. So if you're still a PC hound, you say, "Well, I just you know, taking your game to the computer." We've got you covered there with the BattleTech on the PC as well.
Yeah, I'm not really opposed to PC games, and I know some of the ones that I've really enjoyed playing. I wish they would make a comeback. In fact, some of the old style strategic war games where you could play with player versus player, because again, it's that human interaction. But in a lot of those cases, the way that you would interact was just kind of clunky, and everything was like key. You had to be really super fast on the keys, and so being able to kind of talk while you're doing all of that and interact, it wasn't always very user friendly. But I see that things have been kind of changing with like the kind of game hosting that you're talking about doing, and where you can have someone who facilitates, who's a game master or dungeon master or whatever is appropriate for the game you're playing, and that takes a it gives you a way of kind of everybody being able to connect at the same time, play the game without it being just basically a how fast are your fingers contest, because not all of us got the won the genetic lottery for really fast dexterity,
Right.
but we still enjoy playing the game, so it's kind of cool to have that. that type of game where it's about the strategy, about the human connection, about the decisions you make, a little bit of turn based, maybe that kind of thing is exciting too.
That's that's right. One of the best descriptions for war games, or a good war game that I heard, was I want a series of interesting decisions, and that's what you get with a turn-based war game. Sure, everybody talked about real time being, more realistic. Uh, there's an argument to be made when you have a brain that can process things in a way that's faster than you, faster than any human. You know, it doesn't. It's not the same. But nothing like pitting your wits against another human being and being able to do so with the ability to take a breath, think about what you're doing, like you say, not just being some reactive goalie to shots on your person. So it's definitely a strategic level or strategic thinking type of game, and it's great to collaborate. So some of the best games I played, again, at Gen Con with a handful of people or more. Planning as much as executing is fun. Taking a look at that map, what's the best way to do this, and how do we go about this, and coordinating with people, and making friends, and that that theater level multi-person experience. You're in the gaming hall, and you hear a group of people, hooray! Everybody's screaming because somebody made that clutch play. They rolled that 20 when they needed it, and they, you know, just like the game you were playing. I think you were getting beat up pretty good. We're playing BattleTech, and you're getting shot up, but that one lucky shot on my cockpit, you pull it out at the end, and victory is yours. Yeah.
I have to admit, I did not. My first ever game of playing BattleTech. That is, and we did play just the one time. And I thought I was going to lose for sure because I didn't really know what I was doing, and you pretty much had to go like guide me through even what I was doing as far as what it means when you're selecting these different features for your mech, and how many points, because you got to spend up to a certain level. You can't have, like I wanted every gun they made, of course, but then I probably would have overheated my mech, or you slap all that armor on and then you're too slow, so you have to find exactly the right balance. And I was thinking, well, I don't know what I'm doing, so I guess I'll just try and make the best decision at each point. And then in that one lucky shot, and of course it's a headshot, because that's my favorite thing is to shoot for the head. But that was pretty fun. I was very excited by that. Look forward to playing again too. um, a lot of fun to play that game. And there are so many games that are like that too, where you don't realize how much fun that they're going to be until you give it a chance and kind of get in there and learn. There is a little bit of, these aren't just like turn it on and start pushing buttons and you'll figure it out. There is a little bit of like, you do have to learn just a little bit of what's going on. But if you have, a good group who's going to work with you and give you that chance to kind of pick it up a little bit at a time, that can be the most fun you'll ever have.
Right. And our service is, when you play with a arbitrator, a judge, a game master, a dungeon master, whatever phraseology you want to use that's thematically correct for the game you're playing. Uh, it does a lot of things to go geek and quote from a geek movie. It's your first step into a larger world. It's you don't have to think so much about calculations. You don't have to do uh, all the record keeping. As much as BattleTech has been a positive game that's made a lot of money because it's so good, there has been some jokes about some of the record keeping that go with it. And you won't have to do as much of that when you have our staff uh, taking care of it for you. We do a lot of that. We alleviate the player overhead so that you can focus on making, like we talked about earlier, the series of interesting decisions. And if you're not experienced, don't be intimidated. A lot of people would like to play these games and then go, but you don't have to, because as not only are we facilitators, we can be instructors. We can sit you down prior to the game. We can get you set up. You don't have to learn every rule in the book. We can give you a synopsis that gets you on the table and playing with some confidence against people, no matter what their experience level is. So it's a great benefit that way.
Yeah, definitely. And it's cool too because sometimes it's the little things. As a newer player myself who hasn't, always played these games, and I will admit I've always had an interest, especially like when it comes to old-fashioned D&D. I wanted to play that when it first came out because I'm of the age where, full disclosure, I'm a full Gen Xer. I was around when D&D was new and very exciting. But I lived in the country. I lived in a place where a lot of folks actually thought it was, a road straight to hell paved with dice. But so I didn't get a chance, right? I didn't get a chance to really play in my native environment, and there wasn't really the internet hadn't taken off at that time, so there wasn't really an alternative to that. So I never really got a chance to get involved with that when it was brand new, and I always kind of regretted that because I wanted to. I got the book, the kit, and everything for Christmas one year because my parents weren't, they weren't all freaked out about the whole, using your imagination wasn't as scary to them as it was to some people at that time. But anyway, it's nice to have this option now where people can do these kinds of games even if they aren't in a place where there's a large group of people who want a game, and where you're going to have a chance to like learn from somebody who's already played them, who's got the patience to kind of get you started, and then you can take it from there once you get it started. But um so I do appreciate that.
Yeah, that's it's. Not everybody lives in the population density of Manhattan Island. I think sometimes people forget how desolate certain portions of the world, even the United States, is. We're not one great big suburbia. So, uh, and you'll hear people go, "Well, there's nothing beats face to face." No argument. No argument. For me, I'm just saying that we like to service those whom, for financial, schedule obligation, or geographical location, are hindered in their ability to have a face to face gaming experience, which isn't always a net positive. Gas is on the rise. Uh, Travel times can be inconvenient. You ever been stood up after making a 15-mile drive into downtown Milwaukee? I have. Sucks. You'd much rather. Uh, we'll make sure that you're not stood up. But just as an example, back in the day when I had to pull a ad off of a bulletin board and call some stranger to set up a game with him, and then he didn't show up, or she, uh, that was that really ruined your day. So, uh,
Well, and then there's the snacks. You bring snacks and then they eat all your snacks, and then no, I'm kidding. but
yeah,
but you can eat your own snacks when you're playing from home.
right.
So that's always nice.
Yeah, you spend $50 on a gaming book, and God knows how much money on felt covering for your table. You may not want anybody drinking that Diet Coke at your table, but if you're at your own house, you can be as comfy as you want in front of your console while you play, and still get that interaction like you can have with a Zoom call or something like that. It's again, we're not arguing that people need more face to face contact, or that it's a better situation. A lot of people tell you, well, you can't key off of people's facial expressions unless you're face to face. I think these cameras are pretty good. Either way, if you can't make the trip, all you can have to do with us is log on, and we can get you the rest of the distance. So that's what the service is about.
Right. Yeah. So I'm so glad that I had a chance to kind of talk with you about all of these things. And BattleTech is definitely one of the great games out there. There's so many others, and I know we're probably over the course of doing all of these, we're going to do some lives and we're going to do some other content and touch on some other games too that are really exciting, and including role playing, basic war games, all kinds of stuff. There's just so many different things out there that, people can take advantage of, where you can play a game that's a real, social experience, and you don't have to worry about the logistics of getting everybody together and, having a place to play or whatever. You can do it from the comfort of your home. So I hope everybody goes on this journey with us, and would welcome any suggestions anybody wants to put in the comments below, and making sure that you like and subscribe so we can keep in touch on this stuff. We're going to have a lot more content to come in the future as well, and we're always open to feedback and suggestions from our listeners and players. So exciting stuff to come.
Yep, yep. From the ancient Romans versus the Gauls up into battle mechs from House Carita and House Steiner going at it. We've got all points in between, a myriad of games from all over the real world, and every fantasy genre you can think of are all coming for people who are interested in a little bit of immersion, league play, camaraderie over the internet, as opposed to the typical social media dog fights that go on online. A little positivity, a little gaming. Hope to see you there.
Absolutely. And please do comment if you have any games that are your favorites that you would like to hear us discuss. And we'll definitely pay attention to those, and look at putting together something for the future for you, so everybody is able to be represented. And thank you guys all for giving us your time, and your likes, and all of the other things. So thanks for sticking with us.
Yep, thank you. Again, I'm available on my Discord. Join up. The link will be put down there. Ask about BattleTech or any of our other games, and we'll see you out there on the field of battle. House Steiner. Later.
Happy gaming, everyone.